fallout for UFC 201 coming right up on AfterBuzz TV.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Right?
Just me and you.
You
What
know
nationality are you?
Huh?
What nationality are you?
I'm half Mexican, half Colombian, born in America.
You're Hispanic.
Yep.
All right,
exactly.
good. Finally. This is how I wanted it.
Aw.
Just kidding, folks. Just kidding. We're of course, as you may know, if anybody watched last our after show, of course, Jay Chan no longer a part of our panel. Always going to be here in spirit, though, and we are here to continue the legacy of the UFC AfterBuzz show. Of course. Even though Jay Chan is not here, you know, obviously he's been a staple in our after show. We are here to keep talking about UFC, and not only us, but everybody out there, iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, all things MMA or UFC, because we all, at the end of the day, we all love this sport. We all, you know, watch it religiously, and we're here to talk about it because we love talking about it. But as always, I'm not alone.
What's up, guys? I'm Gabriel Gonzalez. You can find me on Twitter at @G on TV.
And I'm George Hermoza. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, PlayStation Network, etc., etc. G Hermoza, GHERMOZA.
I gotta add you. We need to play some Call of Duty or something.
I don't play Call of Duty.
You know what?
Wait, hold on. I play
on
UFC 2.
Oh, okay. You know, I'm still on the old one.
Really?
I need to get it. You know, I need to go to Best Buy or something.
Yeah, maybe. If anything, like it's really hard for me to like either submit somebody or get out of submission. Like once I get that down, I'm good.
That's what I've heard, you know. I mean, the striking, it's very fluid, but yeah, the video game's very interesting. By the way, I'd like to point out, you know, we're like the Dana White of the UFC AfterBuzz show, you know. It's there's new management, but we're continuing on because we love the sport.
Exactly. Maybe one of these days we'll have like a live show of us playing UFC 2. Just to show how much everybody suck at that game.
I think that would be great on like Periscope for us to do.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But yeah, we are here covering UFC 201. It was just yesterday from Atlanta, Georgia. Not too often they're in Atlanta. I think it was their third time ever in Atlanta. Yeah. Their last time being UFC 145. So
it's been a while.
Yeah, we're at UFC 201. So 66 pay-per-views ago.
Yes.
They're in Atlanta at the Phillips Arena.
Also very brave. I mean, it's summer in Atlanta. So it's hot Atlanta. So, hey, but here's the thing. It's extra hot over there.
Oh, really?
You know, so it's
hotter than here because it's pretty hot today.
Okay, it was, but you got to think all the guys are like, "Hey, we're gonna have no trouble making weight this time."
Yeah, maybe. But yesterday, initially, it was a 2 championship fights on yesterday's pay-per-view, but unfortunately, Demetrius Johnson did get hurt. He was scheduled to face Wilson Hayes, who is actually did fight yesterday, yes. And he did win in the prelims. So I know that he's probably going to want that next title shot, but I think they already announced that the winner of that Ultimate Fighter is going to get the next title shot between Team Benavidez and Team Cejudo.
Yeah, so the way they're setting it up this coming season is they have flyweight champions from across the United States and the globe. Some of them for smaller shows, like the Tai Chi Palace flyweight champion, I think is Damasio Page. And when you think about it, you know, Ian McCall originally had that belt before he entered that little 4-man tournament that included Demetrius and Joseph Benavidez originally. So that's their format, and that's going to be the next challenger for Mighty Mouse.
I did like there was a picture, there was like a promo picture of like the fighters in the house, and it's super cool because everybody has a title belt. Yeah, I'm like, wow, it really adds like legitimacy. Even though yes, some of these organizations might not be in as the radar as even a UFC or a Bellator or World Series of Fighting, but it's still a pretty cool picture to see. Like here are the best guys from their organization. Now let's see who's going to be the next guy. Maybe even the future of the division. Who knows how long DJ has or if he's going to move up to bantamweight anytime soon. But it should be fun to watch.
Definitely. And what I like about that is that you need to be able to sell that fight. Quite frankly, if they had just done a regular Ultimate Fighter, you drafted 2-in-1 guy, just great personality for TV, you would not be like, what is that? What, like, do they hate the guy feeding him to Mighty Mouse? So I'm glad they do have that kind of format, because a regular Ultimate Fighter, you just wouldn't care about who won it, because that guy would be destroyed by Mighty Mouse.
Yeah. Should be fun to see. But in the meantime, we did have another championship fight that was scheduled, and thankfully, no injuries. No, the welterweight division is they're pretty good as far as everybody being healthy.
They are.
Even when GSP was dominating the division, you didn't really see many of his challengers get hurt.
No, it's
So a lot of good guys, obviously training, obviously we saw the whole fiasco with the light heavyweight division at UFC 200. With that, who knows when the next time that belt's going to be defended. But now we had the welterweight division with the welterweight champion, Robbie Lawler, who has been on a complete tear for the last few years, even coming home from Strikeforce, facing on the guy who has been waiting and waiting and waiting, and Tyrone Woodley. I think the last time he fought was maybe 15, 16 months ago?
January 2015 against just Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah.
He was scheduled to fight in October against Johnny Hendricks,
yeah.
but that's when Hendricks had that issue the day of. He couldn't weigh in. So Woodley's been out for, I think they said 15 months, 18 months.
Just about, yeah. And especially with the way Hendricks has been fighting, it's hard to argue that Woodley probably would have lost that. I mean, he obviously has been looking good in his last few fights. I think even, going back to his fight with Condit, before Condit got hurt, I thought he was looking good. And I'm a big Condit fan. I remember watching that fight. I'm like, dude, I think Condit's going to lose this one.
That's what I thought too. Woodley, I mean, obviously who knows, especially with a guy as durable as Condit, but definitely Woodley was already winning that fight early on before Condit had that injury. So you got to think he looks sharp. And also, he talked about it with Dominic Cruz on the Fox Sports 1 after show. Ring rust. I mean, he looked like he'd been in shape. He looked like he'd been training, but his timing was just on. Obviously, we saw how it played out, but just... he looked in shape. He didn't look like he was suffering any ring rust out there, even though it was just a first-round fight.
And the big storyline for this fight was these two guys, both American top team guys. They wouldn't exactly say that they were teammates. Just maybe it's a big gym. Obviously, not everybody is best friends with each other in that gym, but they've sparred together, they've trained together, they've grappled together. So definitely no strangers to each other. It definitely wasn't their first time seeing what each other has got, seeing feeling each other out. So that was a big is Robbie going to have the advantage? Is Woodley going to have the advantage? As we clearly saw, and especially with how long that fight lasted, clearly it was Tyrone Woodley. Now my question for you is, how? What do you think happened? Did Lawler show up? Did he not show up? A lot of people were talking about his walkout was a little bit different. What did you see initially when you saw Robbie Lawler, come out before the actual fight started?
You know what? I mean, the walkout is so deceiving. Some guys
I agree.
Every now and then they jog out where usually they're so calm and chill. They're like going to meditate. So I didn't put as much into that. He didn't look necessarily worried. I'll tell you, for example, the second time Anderson Silva fought Chris Weidman, that was the one walkout where I honestly thought, I don't think this guy mentally he's prepared to go in there. Physically, yeah, I'm sure he did the training, but mentally he looked nervous. Lawler, I didn't really see that, when he walked out. Yeah, so his pacing might have been different, but I think he was about as good as he was gonna get going into that fight. A question that I heard brought up was, Lawler, we all know he's, he puts on a barn burner. He's been, going back to the Hendricks fights, he went 5 rounds with Hendricks, 5 rounds Matt Brown, another fight with Hendricks, obviously McDonald, Condit. Has, even though he hasn't lost any of those fights, has that chin just the button been worn out and Woodley found it? And then we almost can't know because Woodley, even though sometimes he does seem a little,
He's
stale out there.
Times,
yeah, we do know he does have that one-shot power at times, so it's hard to determine whether it was Lawler's chin, Woodley's power. But we do know this. Lawler is about as durable as it's going to get. That shot did land on the mark. There's no question about it.
As great as Tyrone Woodley is, it's kind of hard to get that visual of Nate Marquardt just destroying him with that uppercut back in Strikeforce. And obviously coming in, he's lost to Rory McDonald and Jake Shields, but he beat Josh Koscheck, who in my opinion was kind of at the tail end of his peak, I guess you can say, maybe even past his peak. Obviously his victorious win over Kelvin Gastelum, which was a split decision. So a lot of people probably thought Gastelum won that fight, but again, Woodley is proven that he can show up. Obviously his fight with Hendricks, that's not his fault. But and in my opinion, I've been saying this for a while, that Lawler, while he's 34 years old of age, the guy's got 39 fights. And not only just 39 fights, but majority of those fights just takes, I don't want to say takes years off your life, but man,
You do not have a long career,
especially
fighting
after
like
that fight with Rory McDonald and Condit as well, and Hendrick. I mean, all those fights.
They were.
So while as great as Robbie Lawler is, like at some point it's going to catch up to him.
No,
Again,
definitely.
He's 34 years old. He's still relatively young in life in general, but in the fight game, not just in the fight game, there are a lot of young 34-year-olds in the fight game, but with being 34 and the amount of fights that he has and the experience, at some point, it was going to catch up to him. And I did kind of think it was a little weird just how patient he was. Because I think it's okay to be patient, but I think Lawler was just too patient.
You know what? Remember that he's been a bit of a slow starter more recently. Obviously, early in his career, you alluded to it. I mean, the guy, he debuted in the UFC when he was 19, 20.
Just about,
I think at the time, they've had guys younger now debut. But at the time, he was the youngest guy ever in the UFC. He's obviously had a long career, gone a lot of places. But in the Condit fight and in the McDonald fight, he did have a bit of a slower start. He didn't just go out there trying to bulldoze them in the first round. So honestly, even though Woodley, he had him up against the clinch, he was controlling the center of the octagon, that's kind of par for the course for a Robbie Lawler fight lately.
He's more of a round 4, round 5.
Yeah, he's going to turn it on. He gets hit a few times. He kind of tends to turn it up, increase his level, and we see a typical fight out of him. So I don't know, but it's hard to read just because it did end so quickly. When you think about it, it does seem pretty par for the course. Now, obviously, his next fight is going to determine a lot of exactly where he's at physically. Is his chin a little worn out? Is he just maybe, he's taken a lot of damage in his career? He's been very lucky that for as many battles as he's been in, he hasn't pulled out of a fight either.
Exactly.
His health has been good.
Again, that welterweight division is pretty good as far as, Hendry is obviously in the heavyweight division. We see a lot, especially with Cain Velasquez and, people pulling out. But with that said, I mean, obviously, the most natural, conversation to have a lot of these times is what's next for each guy. Yeah. I heard a little bit of rumbling of immediate rematch. I think Chael Sonnen might have said that. I disagree with that. I think even though Lawler has done his due for that division and obviously had eyeballs on that division, I don't know. To me, it just didn't scream out an immediate rematch.
It didn't to me either. I think that if there was a guy who was maybe if they didn't have a really, really good marketable fight, a marquee contender, then maybe you could say, you know what, we gotta have that rematch. The thing at 170, I mean, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson has been knocking on the door for a while now. He really cemented his place as the number one contender with his win over Rory McDonald. And did you see the Fox Sports 1 after show, the interview? Yeah. Yes, so I thought that was very interesting because you know what? So they mentioned it. Woodley said he wants a money fight like Nick Diaz, before he gives Stephen Thompson a shot. And Diaz's suspension is up on Monday, he'd be eligible to fight. Would they fight at 202, a Diaz and Diaz card? I really doubt that, but it does raise a big question. We've heard rumblings, GSP may be coming back. Let's throw Nick Diaz out there. Who would be next for Tyron Woodley? And also, to your point, I don't think the Lawler rematch is the biggest money fight you could make if you're Tyron Woodley. Or even in that division. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. Obviously, if anybody knows, I'm a huge Wonder Boy fan, Wonder Boy supporter. I've been tweeting him to be on the show at some point, hopefully sometime soon.
I mean, you're in LA, Steven. I know you didn't get a plane back home that quick.
I did like that little comment that kind of Tyrone Woodley made. I'm like, hey, well, you thought you were going to end up fighting Robert Lawler, so there's your next fight. I was like, as much as I love Wonder Boy, I'm like, all right. He got you, Woodley. Or he got you, Wonder Boy. But the Nick Diaz thing is intriguing because here's a guy who hasn't won a fight in nearly 5 years. And not only did he not, I mean, it's not like he hasn't fought. He's had 3 fights. Obviously losing to who did he lose to? He lost
Anderson,
to GSP,
technically. But
Anderson
GSP.
and
Condit. Because he beat BJ
No, he lost to Condit. You're right.
He lost to Condit because then they did the interim.
And then he lost to Anderson Silva. So, well, I mean, obviously Nick Diaz is Nick Diaz, but at some point you got to, it's still a sport. At some point you can't just give this guy a title shot.
It's true. I think not Lawler. Woodley was thinking, you know what, money signs. This guy's good. Okay, as in shape as you might assume Nick Diaz to be, like you said, he hasn't won a fight in a while. Also, stylistically, Woodley, he can take him down, fight him. We know Diaz, for as good as he is at jiu-jitsu, really struggles with wrestlers. Also, even in the stand-up, he does not take it to the ground that often, even when he's losing. We saw that in the Condit fight. He was destroying Condit when he got it to the ground. But he went through 4.5 rounds of losing on the stand-up and never once seemed to go for a clinch or a takedown. So I think Woodley is seeing easy fight, easy money, big payday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, he clearly said he wanted the payday. I mean, personally, I think Wonder Boy is getting to a big enough name. And I don't know, I just, when I see Woodley, and, you know, he's great. He's an excellent analyst on UFC on Fox. But I don't know, just he doesn't seem to me as a guy like, oh, well, yeah, let's give him a big money fight. Like, not to say he doesn't deserve it, because obviously he is the champion. But, like, I don't know, I just don't think at this point he's ready to make demands. He doesn't have, like, that squeaky clean record or showing that he can be a proven draw like a Conor McGregor or even like a Ronda Rousey has. It's like, you know, kind of, show your worth.
I hear it. As far as champions go, he hasn't shown to be necessarily a killer for so many fights like Lawler, like a lot of the other guys and girls you've mentioned. So I get that. And also, when you think Lawler, he was in the perfect spot to be promoted. I mean, he was running through a lot of the top guys in the division. We all thought, hey, if he gets past Woodley, obviously money fights with Wonder Boy, GSP, whoever are going to come up next. Woodley, I mean, he hasn't even fought the last guy to hold the belt before Lawler and Johnny Hendricks. Besides Robbie Lawler, really, you know, hasn't fought another top 5 guy. So I definitely see your argument. That said, I mean, you hold the belt, you kind of get to make demands. I do think that Woodley does end up in the end fighting Wonderboy Thompson, only if GSP doesn't, you know, somehow shake up everything and announce a comeback.
See, I think with GSP, and contrary to what Woodley is, he's a guy who has proven himself. Here's a guy who was one of the biggest draws and definitely, you know, shown him as champion. Even though probably GSP is one of my best favorite fighters of all time, I'll be the first to say he totally lost that fight to Hendricks. When I remember like it was yesterday, I was watching the fight and I was one place, and then the fight ended. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go to the next place, you know. I mean, Hendricks won, whatever. Or I'm sorry, yeah, Hendricks won, whatever, you know. And I get to the next place, you know, not checking my phone because I think it died. And then I hear like, wait, what? What? How the hell? And I love JSP. I'm like, how the hell did he win? He totally did not win that fight.
I thought they were going to announce that it was for Hendricks too. When you watch it back and you honestly think about the rules, you take a step back, you know what? He did win that first round barely. You know, he lost the battle. You know, if it was a street fight, he lost the battle. But in the, you know, unified rules of MMA, GSP did win 3 of 5 rounds against Hendricks. Yeah. And yeah, that one was another one we all thought, well, they got to have the rematch.
Well, but obviously with GSP, I guess, retiring. Yes. But obviously there's been a lot of rumblings. And again, it sucks for Wonder Boy. And again, I'm a big Wonder Boy fan. But, I mean, it's GSP, for goodness sakes. And especially with the draw of him being back for the first time in around 3 years. I mean, yeah, you got to do the Woodley GSP.
Timing is really great if GSP wants to.
Madison Square Garden.
Yep, New York. Yeah. And he's also trained out there with the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I know, what is it? His coach, John Danaher. He runs the school out there. GSP is very big in New York, too.
Yeah, it should
be. Just the same way he has big fights always when they've had it in Jersey.
It's almost 3 months away, and you got to think some of these fights are going to start getting announced for. Is it UFC 205 or 206?
I believe it's 205.
205, and you got to think, is this card going to be just as big or maybe even bigger than UFC 200, where every single fight could have been at some point a main event throughout, you know, some pay-per-view or some Fox card or whatever.
I think they're really waiting to see who comes out healthy after this big summer that we've had. You got to think John Jones was a lock being from New York. If he had, you know, beaten Daniel Cormier to maybe fight Anthony Johnson on that card. So you don't know. Chris Weidman is a guy you think they're probably going to try to push there, but they haven't announced anything. Even because we have to talk about a co-main event. Dana White did not, you know, say, hey, even Joanna Jędrzejczyk, whoever she chooses to fight, headlining the card. So really, it's a big mystery timing-wise. Who could it be that they're going to put as the top billing in Madison Square Garden for the first time?
With the exception of the heavyweight championship, pretty much every single title is pretty much, you know, can be defended at that card.
It's true.
Because I mean, obviously with the UFC 203, it's going to be Miocic against Overeem, and then after that, it's like, well, you know, you can put any single championship. And I think, especially with yesterday, with Woodley only being in the cage for about a minute, You know.
He's ready to fight again.
Yeah, he even said it. He wants to fight Nick Diaz in 3 weeks, so he looks pretty healthy to me.
I mean, he looks like he could.
Yeah, but you mentioned that co-main event, and this was another fight that I was looking forward to in many ways. Obviously, Rose Namajunas, a lot of people remember her from UFC fighter, Ultimate Fighter 220. She definitely, impressed a lot of people. She had a cool, if you go back to her highlights, she has a couple cool submissions, obviously. Very excited to watch. But again, there's Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
Yes.
Who I think I mentioned it last time she fought. Very interesting pre-fight stance. And when I mean that, I mean like when they're announcing her name, she's just, the camera just leaning back. I think she's got the flag behind her, just leaning back, smiling,
just chilling.
And obviously you see other people, they're bouncing up and down, got that mean mugging face, throwing a few shadow box and whatever. But you see Karolina just, hey.
She reminds me, I got to go back, obviously nowhere near the same level in their careers, but a little bit of Anderson Silva, always so quiet when he walked out to the cage. All he did was just kind of glide back, touch the fence, and then you just knew something was going to happen. I loved watching Karolina's pre-fight because I think, I think it got a little bit in Rose's head for as durable as she is. By the way, man, what I love about that fight, and it delivered... They fought like the other one stole their lunch money.
Yeah.
They absolutely brought it. I'm so glad they got the fight of the night. It was very, very fun to watch.
I agree.
Now, split decision. Did you agree with the judges' scores?
I agreed with the ones that picked Karolina. Yeah. I definitely I think I had her at maybe 3-0. I think that round one, I think a lot of people scored it for Rose, but I scored it for Karolina. I thought she did a lot more.
I actually thought Rose, that her first round was the best one. She definitely was using a lot of great footwork, getting in and out. She was doing a lot of great pick and pop, especially with the overhand right. When Karolina did get that semi-takedown, Rose reversed it and had top position for a while. So I thought, you know what? Karolina didn't get destroyed, but definitely a good round for Rose. The clinch, it's my third one. I'm not going to use it anymore, but still, it's like when Anderson Silva surprised Rich Franklin with how powerful he was in the clinch with the knees.
Yeah.
You could tell Rose was expecting a good striker, maybe even some grappling. She was not expecting the kind of power Karolina generated in those knees. They absolutely just visibly took away her energy every time they got into an exchange. And as the fight wore on, Rose's footwork, she wasn't moving as well. She seemed to maybe throw those shots more in desperation rather than with strategic purpose. And Karolina she understood what was going to win her that fight. Get inside, get in the clinch. She had to take some shots, but in the end, also great conditioning. We know Rose, when she's not dominating, even in a 5-rounder like she did with Paige, we know that Rose's conditioning has been suspect in the past.
Yeah, looking at the rankings now, obviously we just came off Young Jacek against Gadelia. Carla Esparza, I think, just won not too long ago.
She did.
Obviously, Tisha Torres, number 4, just lost to Namajunas a few months ago. Karolina obviously was number 5. She still is technically today, but obviously tomorrow when they update the rankings, she'll probably be even maybe number 2 or number 3. I think for me, it is the most natural matchup to make for the next title challenger for Joanna. I know probably anything can be on 205, but considering they're both from Poland, you got to headline a Poland card with those two girls.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, I guess when it comes down to it, is Karolina gonna get the support of the crowd? She's not gonna get booed, but they're gonna kind of give her almost the polite clap, and then they're gonna go crazy for Joanna. I feel like just off tenure and visibility. But I agree. I think a big Polish card, even Dana White said, look, it's not that they couldn't headline Madison Square Garden. It's just I'd way rather have that card in Poland.
Yeah,
for the money.
especially not everything has to be, a Poland fighter against another country's fighter. Even on UFC 188, we saw Vitor Belfort against Jacare in Brazil, and they're both from Brazil.
Yeah.
So, why not? And especially with this whole natural matchup. And kudos to Joanna. I guess Dana White said in his interview, on the post-fight show, that I guess Joanna helped Carolina get that UFC contract. She was like, I want, some of the best, not only, from Poland, but just some of the best fighters. But she happens to be from Poland, and I want her in the UFC just so I can show everybody how good I am too, And she thinks that Carolina would probably bring the best out of her. I mean, I think it's be a fun fight to watch.
I agree, and I think that, like you said, if it's not Carolina, no one else really makes sense at this point. I mean, Tisha Torres is coming off a loss to the girl that, Carolina now just beat.
Yeah.
Carla Esparza, we've seen that one already.
Especially, but considering how much she got destroyed by Joanna the last time they fought, it's
Exactly.
just like I think she's still got a lot of work to do to match up with her.
I would have thought, I would have liked maybe Tisha Torres. Hopefully, she gets another fight in the interim.
Yeah.
I think she could have
Paige
been a
Van
wild card.
Zandt's fighting in a few weeks, so we'll see how
Yes.
she does after she lost her last fight. We'll see if the Dancing with the Stars kind of helped her in any way.
That's the biggest thing. I think, okay, short term, her popularity has gone even higher than it was before, but she has to win her next fight in order to show that, hey, fighting is still your thing. Dancing with the Stars, look, I'm never going to knock a fighter for doing what they need to stand out, especially when they kind of have to be very uniform. But Paige really does need another win to show the world, hey, she is serious about the thing that made her famous.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. And then the next fight, another welterweight clash, and I guess this was a kind of a must-win for both guys.
Yeah.
Jake Ellenberger and Matt Brown. Obviously, both guys, or especially Ellenberger, kind of not have had the best track record in the last few years.
Lost
I mean, here's
5
a
of
guy
6.
who looked good when he first kind of broke out in the UFC, beating Jake Shields, but kind of went really nowhere with that. A lot of people, this was when GSP was still champion, a lot of people were pitting Ellenberger as maybe a guy to dethrone GSP.
Yeah.
And obviously with a guy who's maybe lost his last few, obviously losing to Wonderboy, Gaslam, Lawler, McDonald, Safety, and like you said, lost 5 of the last 6. I mean, must win for this guy. I don't know if he's in the last fight of his contract. A lot of people were saying that it might be his last fight in the UFC.
I thought that, okay, what I'd heard is that, he was technically supposed to be cut, but he made that call to Dana White saying, you know what, give me one more fight. I can do this. I can deliver. And so, they said, all right, we'll give you a fight. They give him Matt Brown. And yeah, with his back against the wall, he had a perfect fight. I don't really think, for that kind of, what was it, over in under a minute?
A little over a minute.
But yeah, you can't have a much better performance than that.
I agree. He started off really strong too with that overhand right.
Yeah, what I find most surprising is that Matt Brown was the one to really take the center of the cage. It looked like he was going to pressure him. Ellenberger countered. Also, the body kick that dropped Matt Brown. A lot of the cage side viewers have said that, hey, you could hear that one. And, this is some of the writers who have seen a lot of the fights live said that might be one of the loudest body kicks I've ever heard in person. And we all know Matt Brown, he's almost like Robbie Lawler in a way, too. You got to pretty much take him out with the baseball bat. So you know that Ellenberger hit him with a great shot in order to stop him in the first.
I know. I heard of some more rumblings on Twitter, like, oh, Ellenberger's back. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, obviously, he's won 2 of his last 7.
Yeah.
I wouldn't exactly say he's back. I mean, definitely remotivated. As you said, it turned out that he got cut before UFC 201, and who knows where his career would have gone from there. But here's a guy that beat a very, even though Matt Brown, lost against Damian Maia, still a tough guy. Matt Brown is no joke. Probably the only guy to actually beat Wonderboy. Yeah, and obviously, obviously Wonderboy probably getting a little bit better since then. But I don't know. I'm kind of excited for Ellenberger. I know, like I said, you never know what this remotivation can do for somebody.
No, definitely.
Look, something like Robbie Lawler, who I'm sure a lot of people thought that he was down and out, even in the Strikeforce.
They thought there's no way this guy's going to come back and destroy everyone in the UFC. So I think, definitely let's wait and see. Jake Ellenberger, he does need to have a few good style matchups in order to kind of really bounce back. I mean, you don't want to put him in there with a grappler because that's just going to send things, I think, back downhill. But for right now, definitely big win for Ellenberger, and
I guarantee, I'm putting on my thinking cap. My spidey senses are tingling.
Okay, Nostradamus.
I guarantee Jake Ellenberger is going to fight the winner of CM Punk versus Mickey Gall. Oh, they just said Ellenberger's going to fight Mickey Gall. I thought
that Mickey Gall I thought that was at 185.
Oh, it's 170.
It's a 170?
Yeah.
Oh, then yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sorry, but I still don't even see I think Ellenberger will fight Mickey Gall before CM Punk does.
Maybe.
I mean, I do think that man just is not going to make it to his walk to the cage. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's still, what, a month and a half away? I mean, I don't know either.
That's a lot of time to pull your back, pull your knee, pull your elbow, break.
As a big wrestling fan, I want to see the fight just for that. But, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Just...
here's the thing. It looks great when... look, he's probably in shape. He does his weightlifting. Yeah. I'm not going to knock that for CM Punk. But it's very different when you know that this trained guy about to make a big payday, if he takes your head off, is going to come in swinging with punches that are hurt for real. Not saying that Punk... I mean, we've all seen Brock Lesnar, how long it took him to adjust to taking a punch. So I think that's what we got to wait and see with CM Punk.
Yeah, should be fun to watch. UFC 203. Yes. Just to kind of round out the card, Eric Perez defeating Francisco Rivera. That beginning of the round 3 was insane.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing. He should have waited till the last minute of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm sure somewhere Max Holloway was fighting or watching and be like, dude, that's my thing, dude. Oh, I love Max Holloway.
True, yeah. That was a good fight, though.
Ryan Benoit beating Freddie Serrano to round out the main card. I know you saw the Nikita Krylov versus Ed Herman, and Krylov was looking good.
Yes. I mean, 1 or 2 fights, you're putting them in the same conversation as Alex Gustafsson, all those other guys. Contender.
Jorge Masvidal defeating Ross Pearson by decision. Anthony Hamilton defeating Damian Grabowski in 14 seconds. That was pretty impressive. Of course, as you mentioned, Wilson Hayes defeating Victor Sandoval by submission. Obviously, he's looking for that next title shot, so we'll see when he's going to get it or if he's going to fight anytime soon. But, I mean, he's a guy. He's been looking good, too. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be DJ. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but obviously he needs new contenders.
I mean, someone's got to get in line, right? So.
Yeah, and then on the Fight Pass card, Michael Graves versus Bojan Velikovic. I mean, it's probably
Jay
not,
would be so proud of you.
I'm sure it says Bojan Velikovic, but I bet it's like Shashovsky or something, I don't know how it is with some of these guys. But Damian Brown defeating... that was by a majority draw, by the way. And Damian Brown defeating Cesar Arzamendia.
I'm going to get you a Rosetta Stone before our next show.
I don't know.
We'll work on it.
We'll see about that. Obviously, we haven't been here in a few weeks since UFC 200. A lot's happened since then. Big talk. Brock Lesnar. I mean, when you first saw that, when you first heard that story... What were your thoughts?
To be honest, I was disappointed in
myself. Were you
myself.
Surprised?
Yes, but here's the thing. I wasn't surprised that he passed the test. I was surprised that I let myself believe he passed the test. Or I wasn't surprised that he failed. I was surprised that I believed he passed.
I'm a big... I like Dana White, and don't get me wrong, and we'll talk about the UFC cell in a minute. But I don't know. The thing I hate most about Dana White is that he gets so, I don't want to say defensive, but, He's so insulting, and I get it. Twitter, the people on Twitter, they can be the complete biggest douchebags in the world. Don't get me wrong, but I think somebody tweeted Dana White oh well, obviously he's on steroids, and it's no, he's been tested 8 times. You freaking idiot, you dummy. And you can just tell the way Dana White says it too, just by knowing his voice. And then it comes out oh, by the way, Brock Lesnar tested for a couple positive or USADA, and now it's where's the apology, Dana White? You're sitting there insulting everybody's intelligence or talking down to them. Now it's well, what now?
It's true, and I think it was a big sleight of hand worthy of Vegas that you think a guy 39 years old looks like that naturally, but then when you honestly think about it, it makes perfect sense. And also, Brock Lesnar, he's still under contract with WWE. He was never going to come right back to the UFC. Yeah. You could start his suspension now. He finishes out his pro wrestling contract. Oh, look, I'm back.
Yeah. I mean, but another thing noteworthy to mention about that is Mark Hunt is... To be pissed, or I'm sorry, for me to say that he's pissed is an understatement. I mean, he is just done with it. I mean, and I do you agree with everything that Mark Hunt says? I think he's got a point.
Oh, no, definitely.
I think he has a point. I hope I see him fight again, and hopefully in the UFC, because obviously I want to see him in a bigger scale. Who is he going to fight? Who knows? But I don't know. I think he's right. I think he should get a good amount of Brock Lesnar's purse, or not even that, maybe just for them, because obviously his big thing is, dude, you pretty much put me in not only with Brock Lesnar, but a roided up Brock Lesnar. Are you trying to kill me?
You know what? Look, there's certain rules with the athletic commission. Okay, you miss weight, you give them 20% of your purse. For something like that, they lose their win bonus. There's a lot of other, clauses involved that I can't call on the top of my head. If Mark Hunt, look, the UFC on UFC 200 did right by the women, saying, hey, Respect MMA, respect the level of these two women. We're making them the main event. You're telling me now that you're going to stand by those values, but you're not going to necessarily compensate this guy who had to fight a roided up opponent. Mind you, that guy made $2.5 million. Mark Hunt, I don't know his purse, but I know it wasn't anywhere near that. I think Mark Hunt does deserve to be well compensated by the UFC. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be Dana White. It could be the new owners for all I care, but you need to have a public apology. There needs to be a precedent. Because for a guy to have that happen to him, and the UFC, which stood on these values, and now suddenly you're letting that kind of fight happen and still giving that opponent his $2.5 million, no win bonus, just a flat $2.5 million, there's just something wrong with that, as a company. Mark Hunt, if he says, I didn't get my compensation from the UFC, I got a split, I can't even blame him. I wanted to see him fight UFC. I wanted to see him fight those guys. But I wouldn't blame him when you know that they're going to screw you over like that. So I really hope the UFC does right in this situation.
I think there were a lot of things wrong with that situation. And obviously one of the biggest things that I thought was wrong was the fact that, according to Mark Hunt, UFC did not even contact him. It was like, hey, Mark Hunt was all out there saying anything and everything and like nothing. But again, we're going to see now, we're going to talk about the sale. What if anything's going to change? Obviously, Dana White is still going to be there. He's going to be like the, I guess you can say, top executive, not the owner. I don't think he's going to have any. No, I think he still has a minority.
I think that somehow he does stay on, mm-hmm. and he does part of his contract. Look, as long as UFC is making money, Dana White is still making his cut. Yeah. Not just his flat, paycheck that they gave him. But I do think that the owners, they understand that Dana White is the one who knows everything about production, not just inside the cage, event day. All the TV shows that they do internationally, they need Dana White to kind of bridge this gap to understand what exactly are all the pieces we have working with. They said, Dana White has a 5-year contract. Let's see where they're at in a year and a half. And we'll see maybe, hey, Dana White's future with the UFC, it's probably going to depend on if Dana is going along with the changes they want to make as a company to the UFC. He's still the guy who knows the most about, the organization. But it's going to be, does Dana White roll with the new direction, or does he maybe just part ways after making sure that this thing is all right for the future, at least in the eyes of the new owner?
Yeah, it should be fun to keep an eye on. We're going to be back in a few weeks, so I'm sure there are going to be a lot of new development, not just in that aspect of the game, but I'm sure maybe people getting pulled out of fights. Maybe we're going to see some cards finally being announced for UFC 205, or some fights being announced for UFC 205. Yeah. We're going to be back for UFC 202, obviously the big one, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. And before we say goodbye for the day, I want to know about predictions. AfterBuzz predictions.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
For Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz?
Well, a couple of other fights, because here's a card where the main card, to me, it's stacked. It's still stacked. Obviously, Cody Garbrandt coming off a very much impressive victory over Thomas Almeida, facing Takeya Mizugaki. I'm sure we both probably going to say Garbrandt's going to win that fight.
I agree with that. Mizugaki, he's been in a rough stretch, and I think Garbrandt is that perfect blend, explosiveness, he's hitting his stride. I think that he overpowers Mizugaki.
Mm-hmm. And we got Donald Cerrone in his 3rd straight fight at welterweight against Rick Story.
I actually got Cerrone also.
I got Cerrone too. Man, I love Cerrone. Here's a guy who I think gets the shaft. You have somebody like Dana White saying, of course they'll give Conor McGregor anything he wants. He's bailed us out. No, Cerrone's the guy who you should probably be rewarding the most. He's a guy who's down to fight anytime, any place.
Not definitely. And the thing about Rick Story, though, he is more than Patrick Cote, a solid, durable 170-pound guy. Yeah. Cote, he's kind of been a bit of a one-trick pony. He's got his big right hand. Rick Story has more tools, so that would be a very big step on the ladder for
I agree. In the light heavyweight division, we have Anthony Rumble Johnson against Glover Teixeira. That should be a fun fight to watch. I already got my pick. Who's your pick?
Rumble.
Man, we're just going to agree with everything. I'm kind of curious about the next one.
Okay.
First, we got the main event. Personally, I still don't care about this fight much. I think that I don't think that Conor McGregor should fight Nate Diaz, or I think he should defend the belt. But I get it. Obviously he's the cash cow for the UFC, and I think the worst thing that can happen is him lose. But who you got in this fight?
You know what? To add to that, it doesn't make sense at all. But let's be honest, it's penciled in. Let's enjoy the show. I
you're
hope
right.
they have great trash talk, but let's have a fun fight. Get it out of the way. Get back to 145.
But who wins?
Conor McGregor loses.
Oh man, I was gonna say Nate Diaz as well.
You know what? Here's the thing. Nate Diaz, not a natural 170 pounder, but the fact is, preparation. His conditioning's going to be great. He's got time to prepare for Conor's striking and his style. McGregor, as much as they say, hey, well, you know, he was just training movement. He thought he could walk in and beat Diaz. This is still a guy who has that much weight on you, height, reach. It's not like Nate Diaz is a slouch either. He's got great boxing, great jiu-jitsu. I mean, look, prepared or not, I just don't see Conor walking out with that one.
A lot of people, I mean, and I've said this many, many times, and a lot of people have said this too, because I've said it, is that sometimes a loss can be the greatest thing to ever happen to your career. So we're going to see if that loss, what that does for Conor McGregor's career.
I mean, here's the thing. 2 losses in a row, here's what would be the best thing that happens to Conor McGregor's career. He goes back to become the undisputed king of the 145-pound division and stay there. Because moving on up anywhere past lightweight at this point is not, I mean, it's letting ego get in the way.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But thank you, everybody. And if you guys were in the chat room, we were, tuning in to you guys. Thank you, Joseph Boza. Thank you, ANS Ezo M1A. I don't know his name. Juan Tutri, thank you so much for joining us in the chat. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much for watching us on YouTube. But before we're out, where can the people find you on the social media?
Hey guys, you can find me on Twitter all the time, talk UFC at Double G on TV.
And I am George Hermoza. You can follow me on G Hermoza, Twitter, Instagram. Might open a YouTube page soon. Who knows? We'll see. I don't know. I'm all over the place. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
See you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.